Oh, hey.
Hello there.
You be interested in interviewing Thorfindel
Hell
for a little
yeah.
bit?
Yeah.
Love me a Thorfindel.
Is it alright if I drag him in right now?
Yeah, for sure.
Fine by us. Yeah.
Thorfindel was very helpful helping us get earlier versions of my Anbennar version submod up and online. So, hello there,
Bullshit.
Thorfindel. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Not
Yeah, very
too
good.
bad.
We haven't
So,
spoken in a while.
yeah, it has been some time. Who are you playing in this game?
So that's the great ironic thing of me being here. I'm not playing anyone.
That's okay. That's a great start. But that's fine. Well, I'm streaming my screen, so you can see what I'm looking at. What is it that you work on in Anbennar? Probably then the better question.
Yes. I can't see your screen. I'm afraid. I'm doing this from mobile.
Ah,
So just as a heads up,
fair enough.
I work on 2.5 things. I would say I'm in charge of the systems. So as soon as it becomes more than one tag kind of content,
Uh-huh.
I make sure to stick to a certain vision that me, but not just me, have developed.
Right.
And I'm in charge of balance overall, and in charge of the Hellas continent. But in each of those cases, I nowadays more often than not have a co-lead or someone I do this together with.
Okay.
For instance, in Hellas, you'll find the Elephant Lords, played by Elefante. In the last month, he's become my co-lead, and that in practice means he's taking charge of the practical and management side of Hellas development.
Right. So,
And yeah,
so you are the balance lead and in charge of things in Hellas.
yes.
And could you explain the Elephant Lords then to me and how that happens? Because
So
I
strictly
feel
speaking,
like-
that's actually outside of my jurisdiction
okay,
because that's Rahan. But I was involved when they were getting made.
Rahan.
And-
I'm talking supercontinents here. Rahan is part of Hellas.
Yes, and froze the Forbidden Plains.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, there we go. That you're not making it easier. Okay. In that case, if Rahan is technically separate from you, can you explain Bai Hon Jing? 'Cause
Bai
they're
Hon
also
Jing.
yeah, they can be
Yes.
fairly imbalanced, but not too bad, I guess.
Yeah, so Biojing is that's generally that's Honsai, right?
Yes.
Because technically speaking, someone else could form them, but nowadays, due to the lack of MTs, it's Honsai.
Yeah.
Honsai is one of our rare time trial MTs, made by Tators,
Right.
playing Coveria, and if I remember correctly. Anyway, if you are good at the game, if you are able to keep your Ghost Emperor with enough energy, fast enough, you get all the goodies. And if you are unable to, you don't lose the game. You just get less goodies. So it's not necessarily a punishing MT, but it's a rewarding one if you're faster.
I did play with some friends, and my friend played it. And she's very prone to getting very frustrated at minor inconveniences. So it was a very rough game to try carrying on, because that ghost is very hungry, right, for energy, quite a lot.
Yeah. So we tried to aim, like, we decided to, in terms of balance and difficulty, to give it a higher challenge. So those who are better at the game, it's a bit of an exponential snowball, right? So if you're better at the game, you'll actually be able to complete the challenges and thereby become better at the game. So that's maybe a negative aspect.
No,
but,
it's fine. It's a classic good design of risk reward, right? It's
I guess and
big reward.
Yeah. And
good.
just to circle back a little bit, because I know why you spoke about the Elephant Lords, just to make it abundantly clear, they are slated for balancing rework.
Okay,
It
that's
just
good
hasn't
to
happened
know.
yet.
Yeah, it's good to know.
We have a player war in Hellas right now, actually.
We do. It includes Bai Hon Jing, funnily enough. Although Bai Hon Jing are AI and also currently losing very hard.
Bayern, is that Wagenzu doing a war as Bayernfang?
Yes, with he's allied himself to Verkal Ozavar. And I imagine
very well.
this is...
It's a steamroll, actually, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, those are teammates, like, aren't
Yes.
they? Like, predefined teammates?
We've got Gensu on... Hang on, I'm looking at my cheat sheet here. Honsai was actually supposed to be played, but it isn't. Yeah, Wagensu playing Biangfang and Ockman playing Verkal Ozavar are both on team writers.
So, give us
yes.
a little bit of lore about Biangfang, because they're one of a few kingdoms in Fantasy China.
So, I would say Bianfang is more classical example of a warlord with big ambitions.
Right.
And they are ambitious for the Dragon Throne. And
Me too.
it's all about winning the warlords, like winning the Yanshan region.
Yeah.
And grabbing everything. So in that sense, it's more of a vanilla MT. But at some point, there is a scale where how benevolent or tyrannical you act can do a bit of a sliding thing, right? And depending on how you act, is certain modifiers get given or not given to you.
Because Yanshan's got like a tradition of republicanism, right? In the lore, is that right? And there's never been
That's
like a
true,
United
yeah.
Kingdom.
No, we don't like the British in Yangshan whatsoever. Trying to keep them away.
Fair enough.
No, it's true. So at some point in between 100 and 200 AA, as they call it in Anbennar, Haramar set up the eunuch system. The eunuch, however you pronounce it in English.
Yeah,
that's fine,
that's good.
And they've effectively become the aristocracy, and that is is it a Republican? It's definitely not democratic, but it's definitely Republican in the sense that they try to sound Republican because you can't have kids. But depending on which country we look at, that has or hasn't really worked out.
Is it root and stem? It's very important. This, or is it the Ottomans? Do they get the whole shebang with the eunuchs?
I'm afraid I didn't quite understand your question.
Is it
Sorry?
Like, he's asking what kind of castration goes on.
Yeah. Very important. Very important. Because,
root and stem.
Yeah,
That's what you're saying. Like, are you talking about a Raheni country or something?
Yeah.
I'm not going to answer this question.
This is why China in real life survived, but the Ottomans didn't, right? Because, the Chinese, they went full hog, got root and stem. The Ottomans just went for the stem, and that's why the Ottomans failed.
These are not the questions I expected to be asking in a...
Very important lore questions, yeah.
Naturally. So speaking of, like, Hales, obviously, you said you are the balance lead and the system lead then for Hales.
No, for the whole mod.
For the whole mod?
I have 3 hats, yes.
And of many talents. There are a lot of mission trees in Hales that basically ask you to conquer all of Hales. Is that something that will continue to be the case? Because it seems like very few mission trees countries can actually like coexist with one another because of that.
Yeah, so the answer is a bit nuanced in the sense that a bunch of these mission trees happened before we properly restructured our development process, before I even became a lead, because we're talking most of the mission trees you might be thinking of were actually made in the period before Warlords of Hales update, and it was just dev hell at that point, and that's why I actually became lead, because I jumped into that gap to try and structure it.
Right.
But to also save my own sanity, there were limits to how pragmatic I acted.
Yes.
So there was definitely this sense of, all right, conquer Yanshan, conquer the West, conquer everything. And it's good to note that there are exceptions. Phaeton or Bike Dugang,
Yes.
or even Jiang Du, I would say, is an exception because it only cares about the 5 or 7 cities of the Yanhe River, and then makes super generals. So
I've
there
seen
are
them.
exceptions. Yeah, I saw your stream, like your video, just this morning about
I
the
uploaded the video
776s.
just today.
It was dumb. So
Beautiful.
I actually know of this reputation, and it's definitely true, but it's also not as black and white as Reddit likes to make it sound. Because you also have the dwarves, right? They only conquer 2 provinces and they have a whole bunch of vassals, and we've really tried to lean into this abnormal, like, how can we make vassals a successful thing? And I think it really worked out quite well for them.
I think
The Ghost Emperor is a time trial within his own region and then doesn't give a shit about the rest, so that's up to you. So there is nuance to this.
Right.
But you're definitely right, there are some very big prominent names which want to conquer the whole world. That's also true.
Which is fine. I think that's the majority of people who are playing EU4 are looking for, that sort of content anyway. And then there's the other bits that want to have, and in the it's nearly a year, I think, at this point, or more than a year at this point, that I've taken over for the region, and the vision and philosophy has changed to, we want more variation in gameplay.
Yeah.
And I think a good example is personally, I think, is the Fox Nation, the Yin Quan Nation, which is near that lake there on the Yanhe River.
I think are they the one that died?
They are dead, yes.
Yeah.
In the MP, yeah, they have a particular start that if it doesn't work out, you're quite doomed because Bind Fang will eat you.
Yeah.
But they do conquer around them, right? I mean, that's just basic gameplay, so that's definitely there. But then they focus on this spirit thing, and we're currently developing our super disaster, the Rending, aka Spirit Tide, in the past.
I have heard things about that.
Yeah, and we have some of our best designers on it, so it should turn out to be an interesting thing as opposed to just pain.
Yeah.
Like we know our reputation about disasters.
I quite like those though. Like some of overcoming those horrible bits. It's like, for example, the Chocobo Manchurians to the north.
Nugdan Sarai, yeah.
Nugdan Sarai, yeah.
Yeah. Their disaster is rough as all hell, but it's fun to overcome it. So
I will say.
So to keep it a little short, the summary of the Fox Nation is that they are fox spirits, which are actually a split up great spirit, the great fox spirit. They try to gather information and then put her back together, and then they unleash spirit hell all over Hales. And in terms of gameplay, that means that every spirit region, and there are 16 in Hales, gives you 5 quest lines. So that is the Rending disaster. You get 5 quest lines, and if you complete them, you get big boons. But it's like riding a wave. So once again, if you're good and if you're able to ride the wave, you get better and better. You become overpowered, and it's ridiculous. But if you can't ride the wave, then you fizzle out and just go back to normal.
And that has things to do with these temples, the temple complexes.
Yeah. Correct. So it's not in game right now, so you can't really see. But at some point, there'll be decisions which will highlight which region belong to which great spirit.
Yeah.
And then these temples are the ones that are actually they're like the prison guards trying to make these spirits stay away, and you want to ruin those temples and make sure that you can get out with your spirit armies.
Yeah. So since these are like the sort of guards, is it going to be a bit more of a disadvantage to plundering the temples now with the Koroshi drills? Yeah. So I think the first iteration we will probably not quite get there. I think you'll still want to plunder because it's just ridiculously, profitable. Artifically,
Yeah.
Yeah. But the fact that you're plundering should unleash this mega disaster, which is meant to be painful at least for 20 years.
It's a risk reward.
I think
Yeah. I like that. So I don't know. It feels like plundering at the moment has no consequence. So now
it currently doesn't. It currently doesn't. That's very true.
Yeah.
And
massive
repairing
rewards.
is expensive and gives nothing back. So we're also looking at making... One of our ideas is to make repairing temples, to link that explicitly to high philosophy, because it's a weaker religion.
Right.
And to make it act like holy orders do on a more of a dynamic scale.
Yeah.
So if you have a nice repaired temple, it might be a localized bonus to your country in that region.
I like the idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's something that I've been hearing about for quite some time. Because I know when I played as Asgore, I cracked open every single temple I could find. Because you get, it's precursor relics.
Precursor relics
from
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And
yes.
That's quite nice when you're looking at the age of artificery and trying to get the best armies that you can. But if there is,
exactly.
if there becomes a benefit to leaving these temples in place, that would be very interesting to see.
Yeah, so my expectation is that high philosophy will like them to keep them in place, and the rest of the world will try to plunder them and then get hurt by the rending disaster.
I like it. That's
and then
great.
we have a bit of a balance there.
Great
Yes.
balance.
Speaking of precursor relics, is there any in Sarhall that will pop up? Because I saw looking at the resources.
It's a good question. I know that Sarhall is adding some Dame Steer deposits, like permanent ones, maybe one or two. I don't think they're going to get precursor relics in 1444, but don't pin me on that.
Oh yeah, look, there's that famous one with the big comet sight, permanent Dame Star, right? Which was an angel tag, but it's no longer that one.
Yeah, that's my fault. I guess you could say I had it removed.
Yeah.
Oh,
we couldn't get the gameplay figured out.
I will find the tree
messy.
with which to lynch you from imminently. The idea of an angel leading your country, I'm personally all for it.
So wait, I'm going to interrupt you there because the angel tag was the problem. The existence of an angel ruler was not, and we're actually looking at whether we can have an angel lead your country.
Yeah.
We're thinking about having a super, maybe like what I had in mind, but I haven't seen the latest designs yet, is a ruler who will jump in and help your tag. No, a general, I'm sorry. And then if you make your promises, if you do your stuff well enough, then the general becomes your ruler, and then you have this really cool angel ruler.
In the lore, is there sort of like heaven and hell dualism in a sort of Abrahamic sense in Anbennar? Like, is there like
so now
angels and demons and stuff?
So I just realized something. I think I've been lying. I just realized that maybe the latest decision has been to remove the angel. So I apologize. Also, don't find the tree, please. It's been a journey. We're talking 6 months of discussions, also behind closed doors, trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
And the whole question about this duality as well, that's one of the challenges. What we have in Anbennar for sure is the celestial planes, and we also have the inverse of it. I don't know what we're calling them, to be honest. And there are celestial beings, and angels are part of those.
Yeah.
But it's more akin to how D&D does it than the Abrahamic versions.
Got you.
So the more interesting version. God, love it. I do very much enjoy how D&D does its heaven and hell, especially since I recently went to hell in Baldur's Gate 3, so I'm very, very much enjoying all of that kind of methodology behind it. So I'm glad to see that Anbennar is going that route.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's good to have, like, as long as it's like there's an evil and there's a good one.
Yeah.
I think.
So what's an interesting challenge for me and my team is to merge this D&D background, which we explicitly embrace.
Yeah.
But I personally really appreciate the Eastern mythologies.
Yeah.
So I try to actually include them a lot more and how less, and that sometimes causes some conflict because there's the Western D&D worldview, I guess, versus the Asian mythologies, which also are very different, right? It's not one country. Asia is not a country, and it's huge, and there are many different nuances to stories.
Well,
so
I'm inclined to agree with you, because I think one of the joys of Anbennar is it's not one homogenous set from one fantasy, right? I mean, there's inspiration from loads of different fantasy sources, not just D&D, right?
Yeah.
And we argue every day about yet another, paradox which we've somehow made a reality.
Which is fine.
I had a 3-week discussion about, okay, so we have spirits and we have souls. Do souls die or not? Are they reincarnated? Yes or no? And what happens if you're a spirit in Canor? What if you're a ghost? Is that a spirit? And this took ages. And I'm not sure we even resolved it. We deliberately, eventually, we said, we're going to keep it vague. And we all left the room happy.
Which is good. Yeah. No, that is what you want, right? Because as soon as you start drilling down Cimmerillion style into a setting,
it's pain, and it's the
layperson's going to turn off, right? I mean, like, it's people don't care.
Well, there are explicitly ghosts in Canor, though, because you have the Adventurers Wanted events, where there is like a haunted mansion or some such. So
I know. I once had a problem playing as Anbennar, so it's like playing as basically I went to play as like a one-pronged miner for ages to see how I could do it, and a haunted house appeared, and that causes a lot of devastation.
It does.
A hell of a lot of devastation, and I was getting completely wrecked by a haunted house. I basically got killed by a spooky house in Anbennar.
That totally makes sense.
It was good. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
A shame they don't pop up on the trade map mode, so you can see them easier. But yeah, we've figured it out. What happens to the dead? Whatever the dead want at the time, whether they become a ghost or a spirit.
Well, think of all the fantasy settings that do keep it vague like that. Like Warhammer keeps it explicitly vague. What happens to an orc when it dies? What happens to a human when or a dwarf? It's not particularly consistent, and that's fine.
I think everything is true.
I have 5 more minutes, I'm afraid.
No, that's
any more big questions you want to ask?
Big questions. About balance in general, I think would be like, what are we looking at with the balance of the new South Hall content? Are you happy with how that's coming across?
So I'll do the first part, balance in general. It's good to know that in the last half year, maybe just a bit over a half year, I've been working to doubling the balance team. So we have 8 members in the balance team, and the average amount of hours is multiple thousands, and I think we might have someone nearing 10,000 hours. And I've shifted away from the what's the English word? Autocratic or authority-based or tyrannical version of balance where one person says it all.
Right.
That is definitely no longer the case, even though I have the final say if necessary.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of room for discussion, and we've worked towards like baseline values and policy, what we think, formalizing policy on different aspects. Like religions, we have a power budget for religions nowadays.
Right.
So nowadays, I feel our balance is a lot healthier than it was, but we also are not reworking our whole mod, meaning the classical OP examples are most likely still there because we fix what we can, but we also have proper human lives and we touch grass every so often.
Yeah.
So that's. But I feel this is a good platform to say that balance in Anbennar has never been better. I feel because it's a very democratic process from people I feel know numbers, and of course I have a vision. I have a policy, and it's quite conservative. So new stuff is generally weaker than old stuff, if you had to make a comparison.
Right.
And Sarhal, because it's run by, among others, like nowadays it's run by Oriris, the Dwarven lead. He's now also Sarhal lead.
Okay.
And we discuss all the time. And he pretty much has a hotline to the balance team every so often, like every day or every 2 days. He pops into our channel and says, "Guys, I have another thing for you guys to look at." And we've given everything at Sarhal priority. So from province development to trade node sizes to religions, it's all gotten the extra attention from the balance team. So to answer your question, I feel Sarhal will end up being a great first, balance round.
First pass.
Okay.
First pass is pretty good, yeah.
Yeah. A question I've got from chat. How could you tolerate examples of a power budget being larger for some tags than for others?
That's a good question. So this is a very much a pull and push dynamic between the regions saying this tag in lore is important to us, and then the balance team saying, all right, that means we scale it within this tier level, right?
Yeah.
And for national ideas, that's really easy for us. We have behind the screens, we have a calculator, we shove in modifiers and it says it's an S tier tag. And whether you agree or not, that's a big discussion, but we have our tier list and we use that for quick and dirty scans. But then for mission trees, of course, that's a lot more difficult. The bigger the mission tree, most likely, the more modifiers you get. It's a fact. Sizes, it just grows and grows, and people like permanent modifiers nowadays. You'll see that in mission trees a lot more now.
Yeah.
So there's definitely, bigger tags get more goodies, get better. Yeah. And we tolerate it in the sense that we have this whole process of review, which starts at the themes of a tag, saying how important is this tag, and then it gets a budget for MT size, and that gives it a kind of balanced budget. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily larger, but it will end up having more modifiers, which generally means it's better, I guess.
I've got another balance rate questions. One of the things were added a few updates a few ago, of course, was the wonders system. Which has been a great project, which is famously been a nightmare for balance in vanilla. When adding wonders or planning to add wonders, how do you work around that?
So this is one of the, well, I wouldn't say rare cases, but one of the fewer cases where I have personally used my position as balance lead to say, this is how we're going to do it, and you guys don't get to argue with me. And I've said that I really dislike global modifiers for monuments,
right?
For balance reasons.
Yeah,
and I know people, like some people like the Pokemon gotta catch them all aspect of it, which is a very nice single player aspect, and it's great. I'm afraid that's not my vision. And what we've done is we've set up guidelines for how like rigid or how much of a scope a monument can cover. Usually it's regional or religion, or it's your capital must be on this continent. And then most modifiers get shoved into, and I'm very happy about this part, into the regional slot for monuments.
Yeah.
Which is new. It wasn't there for ages, and I really missed it. But now I'm really happy about it, because then it means that either it gives a global modifier, but then you're limited by requirements, like you must be high philosophy to get more manpower. Yeah. Or it's available for everybody, but it only helps that particular region.
That's a nice way of looking at it.
So, yeah, and then we have like 3 or 4 other requirements. Like one of them is we don't really want more than 1 monument, 2 monuments per region. I believe from the top of my head. So if you scan regions, you'll see that should be kind of the spread. And then there's a bunch of other things we look at. But generally speaking, you either get all the monuments and they're all localized, or you get very few monuments and then you have very few global modifiers.
I would say it's mostly true, looking around the map, how many monuments per region there are. But then I look at the yin.
So the yin was a particular project. The yin whether my math failed, okay, we can discuss that, right? But the yin was taken as a grouping. So we looked at the monuments as a set, because I think it's like 4 of them, right? Or 5? You're talking about the dams, right? The dams of the yin?
Yes, the dams and keeps and dames and yeah, there's a lot of them are, I guess the dams are all one thing.
Yeah, so those were done in one set in terms of balancing.
Right.
And like there's also, I didn't mention this yet, but the return on investment for a monument should be approximately 50 to 100 years in my, like when I try to balance it. So if you do it straight for money, that's the kind of money you can get back from it.
Right.
If you do it in terms of manpower, it's a lot more difficult, of course, but we try.
Right. Can Bulwa have some monuments, just out of curiosity, just eventually? Be nice.
Yeah,
My favorite region.
I believe it's a tough one because some of the more monument-hating people are on the Bulwark team. So it doesn't really happen much, I guess.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think they add a certain amount of flavor just having them, and I think the compromise of not having global modifiers, as much as it's a good compromise.
Yeah. I have a question here as well from chat. Do you have opinions on dev bloat or force limit bloat? Both of them get very insane very early into the mod across the board.
I'm sorry about the noise for the kids.
No problem. Don't worry about it.
My kids are on national television. Oh no, wait. Anyway, dev bloat. I don't really understand the question all that well, I'm afraid. Are we talking about the ability to really stack it and by deving? Because we have dev cost modifiers everywhere?
Yes. I think it is about the dev cost modifiers.
Yeah, so this is a bit more difficult in the sense that newer stuff shouldn't really have this issue as much because we've really cracked down on, well, in particular the dev cost one. That's new MTs don't really get that much of that stuff. Old MTs still have it. The national ideas, no, the group ideas, like the regular vanilla ideas have, of course, also changed, so you don't have that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
But then, and this is one of my great grievances with Paradox is when they added infrastructure ideas and added Merc ideas. And we haven't gotten around to doing a full revamp of our Merc system to accommodate for that. Because it's just messed us up in so many ways.
I was going to say, I mean, like, halflings have subsequently
a
massive buff, right?
So we had just redone the whole racial mill, like of pretty much all tags for all races. And then they dropped the new idea group and we're like, all right, halflings win. First 100 years, halflings will rule. And after that, it's a snowball. We're done.
Yeah.
And I was this close to just banning the idea group within the mod. So, you couldn't even use these new ideas. But then we decided vanilla still rules, and then we kept them.
Speaking of halflings, North Viswall is runs into BPEG. So I guess they're using their... They didn't go Merc ideas, actually. We went trade ideas first.
I mean...
Shall we do one more question, and then I'll head off. And then you guys can start casting.
Right. What question do we have from chat? Is Jay Bean a halfling? Yeah, I mean that's an easy answer.
I've seen pictures of Jay Bean. He's probably a halfling.
For sure. I give a softball question then, I guess. What's your favorite nation in the mod right now and why?
So, I really like Saracen. I like the idea of having 5 crime lords beating the crap out of each other.
Yeah.
And the implementation, I've seen a rework proposal which I feel was pretty good, but then it didn't happen, so that's a shame. Like a whole revamp, delete the old MT, get a new one.
Right.
So we have some ideas. It's not in. It's maybe not never going to be in, unfortunately. But I love the flavor. I like this dirty city. It reminds me little bit, the Terry Pratchett books.
Right.
Oh, is it a bit Ankh-Morpork?
In my world view, it is. I don't know if it's true, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
You've entirely sold me on this now because I was looking for one of these sort of cities. I always thought like
I don't feel it's a clean city. I don't feel it's.
Yeah,
Well,
It's like Singapore or Hong Kong when the crime lords ruled the opium trade.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, and
Well, I still have Vietnam-style flashbacks about Sarasung from an old multiplayer.
I've seen those VODs.
Look, I did 38,000 casualties in a single tick against Sarasung. I'm taking the W.
Man, okay, I think I will play Saracen because I like to play as a shithole. Basically, that's it.
But even the old MT, it has some. You can be critical about it, sure, but it is flavorful about you have to unite your little squad of crime lords, and then you're stuck between two great powers. Which, if they don't crumble, you have to think about how to get out, and then you have this conquer down the river theme. So it's atypical, and that's great. I love atypical MTs.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my tag.
I'm sold.
Yeah. I think I will definitely give him a go. You entirely sold me on it.
Yeah. Well, Thorfindel, thank you so much for coming to talk to us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
You've given us some brilliant insights and stuff, and good luck balancing.
Have fun casting. And to everybody listening, you can actually always ping me with critical questions on the Discord server. Yeah, we are not a closed society.
Mainly about angels, please.
I had no hand in this, so do ping me and I will say no idea.
Fair enough. Point in the right direction for who to lynch. There we go.
Yes. Have a great evening or morning or whatever time it is for you guys.
You too.
Yeah.
Take care.
See ya.
See you later. All right. If every interview we have is that level of quality, I'll be very happy with today.
Same. Yeah.
So yeah, that was Thorfindel. I really like that guy. He's helped me out with my own sub mods for years at this point. So
yeah, he's a really decent bloke. I've chatted to him a few times. He's just a nice, lovely bloke.
Yeah.